Okay, cool. So can you start off by introducing yourself?
Yes. So my name is Joseph. I go as the Antisocial Borderline online. I'm 33. I live in Texas, and I had borderline personality disorder.
Mm-hmm.
I have antisocial personality and also obsessive compulsive,
Mm-hmm.
and been diagnosed with a whole bunch of other stuff. My recovery journey's been about 13 years long now. It started after my first attempt. I was about 18, 19. A lot was going on. My mom had passed. I had found out that my partner was cheating on me, and just everything kind of came together. And yeah, and I was put in a psychiatric ward against my will just because of the nature of like what had happened.
Oh
And
no.
they had originally diagnosed me with a bipolar, but my mother had bipolar. So growing up, I dealt with her. I helped her with her medication. I knew all about, like her symptoms and how it worked. And I just knew I didn't have it.
Mm-hmm.
So that just led me to, you know, exploring other therapists, other options. I had to be on the medication for 6 months. Otherwise, they would reinstitutionalize me. So that
Oh,
was rough. Yeah, yeah,
hi.
absolutely.
Oh boy.
I know. To this day, I don't know how that was legal, but it was for my own good, apparently. Just to, I guess, whatever you want to call it. I know. Yep.
Oh,
My partner at the time, he just kept telling me, the second you can, we're just gonna get you off of it. That was like the best thing he ever did for me, because once I got off of it, I wasn't myself. I was a zombie. I didn't have any
oh
passion.
god.
I didn't have any creativity. Nothing like that. I was on lithium, antipsychotics, all of that. So that was my first experience with clinicians and everything that they supposed to do to help. And yeah, after that, I just kept going to different people, and eventually it took almost another year of that, and then I found this. It was actually a couples therapist, and he just one day he just told me, "Hey, have you ever heard of this? This it's called borderline personality disorder." He went
Okay.
down the list, and I had the same like epiphany that like every borderline has. Like you ask any of them when they first hear what it is, it's everything makes sense now. like you know.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. And I got the OCPD one as well. And then maybe about 6 months later, the same therapist. Now, technically, I was never diagnosed with ASPD.
okay.
Clinicians have told me, this is what this is. I
Mm.
believe you have it. I'm not going to formally diagnose you just because of, the stigma, basically. Yeah. Yeah, the biggest one being me being shut off from clinicians. Like somebody sees a cluster B personality disorder in general,
Yeah,
like
they don't wanna.
at the professional level, they're like, no. They'll either try to convince you don't have it. I've had clinicians tell me borderline doesn't even exist. It's a made up disorder. Yeah,
What?
absolutely. Yes, yes.
This is
And I'm talking
absurd.
about,
Oh my God. How
yeah.
oblivious are people?
Yep. It's a female disease, so you can't have that. You're bipolar, things like that.
Oh God.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh,
And
because it's
just
like women have it more.
yeah. I mean they just only women get it, like that there a lot of them are just convinced of that. They see the emotional part, I guess, and they just put the two together and that right there, it's like, just because of my gender, I don't have emotions. Like, is that what you're telling me right now? So it's been challenging.
And they say patriarchy doesn't affect men. Uh-huh.
Right?
Like, what the okay, that sucks. I'm so sorry. Uh, just man, that's a fuck ton to go through. Okay. Damn, okay, so I'm just like kind of curious because this is something I've noticed with two people in my life before that have had borderline themselves, right? But the borderline is like you can tell the borderline's like very high level borderline, and it feels a lot like ASPD, and they haven't been diagnosed as well. So, I is this something like you feel too that a high level borderline is something that feels like ASPD but might not be ASPD? Like,
Um, the first part for ASPD is it started early, like
okay, okay.
Yeah, it started early, like, we're talking like conduct disorder. I was diagnosed ADHD at 8, and
Oh,
conduct oppositionally defiant disorder around the
okay.
same time. Yeah, yeah, so that like the first part is the anti-authority. That you're seeing that at like 6, 7 years old, just like me. Like if I didn't respect the teacher, I was just the worst to them. Like I would ridicule them, I would challenge them. That authority piece of it,
Right.
that's key. You're not going to see that with any of the others. And it's the same with like like police, with your boss, things like that. You're not going to see that with any other than the ASPD. And I don't know, for whatever reason, it's at the core. Like it's just like for me specifically, I
Mhm.
I had my parents as the authority growing up, and they really never showed up for me. And so very early on, I just learned that like I never learned what authority was, because especially with my mom, she's telling me that she's my mother and she's in charge and stuff, but I'm giving her medication and I'm helping her function. So I had that very distorted view of it, and it's carried with me my entire life. Um, that's like a huge part of it. What other than what the borderline is, versus the two, it's when we're dysregulated, for the BPD,
Mhm.
that's probably the only time you're going to see that overlap. You
Okay.
know, if not, then you're going to see a very more submissive, a more attached person, especially if that person's in a relationship. They're going to be looking for validation or approval from their partner to do anything.
Mhm.
ASPD is not like that. Um, when it comes to cluster B, I think that narcissists and borderlines, I think the way that DSM frames it, it's much more on the internal state. It's much
Okay.
more on how the person views the world and like reality and things like that,
Mhm.
versus histrionic and antisocial is more external. This is how I'm going to function in society. This is how I'm going to function with other people. You
Okay.
know, and PD and BPD specifically are very relationship specific. You're going to see the manifestations. You're going to see like all of the everything about it. Like the decompensation. It's going to be in relationships and romantic relationships. The histrionic and antisocial, it's not specific to that. You know.
It's overall.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Plus, there's no internal state mentioned there. Like it doesn't talk about, like for either of them, it doesn't talk about how the emotions are regulated. Like for histrionic, it talks about like it displays, shallow affect. So
Mhm.
displaying to other people,
Right.
not my internal state. Chronic feelings of emptiness for BPD, that's my internal state.
Right.
So like you see that, the difference. Like it's very, you know, I hate the DSM. I hate the way that they like have framed everything, but I that's how I view it anyway.
No, I think that makes sense. I mean, if you don't mind me asking, is that how you feel as well? Chronic feeling of emptiness with regards to maybe your ASPD? Because they don't talk about that, right?
Um, I used to,
Okay.
I used to, yeah, yeah. If I were to put it in just ASPD, emptiness, it's not emptiness. It's more of like it's like an apathy, like anhedonia. Anhedonia is like a core of it. Just like the feeling of nothing.
Mhm.
Like if I'm feeling empty, there's still some type of like negative state. I feel like down or bad or negative. Like ASPD, it's nothing. Like yeah, like
Okay.
I just don't feel anything. I'm flat. So that's how I see like the difference there.
Mhm. Okay, I get it. I know this is a little off topic, but I was very curious when you told me this. So, you remember you telling me something about people with BPD helping people with NPD because it kind
Hmm.
of cancels it out. Could you please talk about that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So so I think that you know okay, I don't even know where to start.
That's okay, take it out, no way.
So I guess so my recovery, right? Like my for 12 years, my recovery was just about me. It was me, my clinician, and my partner. That was all it was, And in the fall of like 2021, I went through like a very bad breakup. It was like a 7 year relationship. It
Ah,
changed my life. It ended my life, basically.
mhm.
And I was and obviously borderline was a major cause of it. And
Okay.
this led me online
Mm-hmm.
and just, I don't even know, like just to look more information up. And then all of a sudden I see all of this narcissistic abuse stuff. And that's how I just saw this world of just like what was out there with it. And I had heard of NPD before. My first partner was diagnosed with NPD, you
Oh,
know. Yeah, yeah. We were diagnosed together actually. Uh
okay.
and then the second long term was he was as well. He told me later on in the relationship. So they were
Uh-huh.
both diagnosed, but they were untreated, you know.
Okay,
It's
both.
very hard. Yeah, yeah, both of them. I had two long-term relationships in my life, one 5 years, one 7 years. So BPD is a much more, you know, it takes much more up of my life.
Okay.
You know, yeah. But so I was with both of them, and after the second one, the whole narcissistic abuse thing came up, and my ex had framed it on me and pushed it on me, you know, that I was a narcissist and a borderline together, and I had heard of it, and I've been tested for all of them, all 10 personality disorders, you know, a couple of times now, and NPD was one that I was like actually really always scored very low on it,
Okay.
and yeah, and I like just everything that I've ever learned about BPD and my recovery, it seems to be the opposite of it. You know, like I've especially made two friends online, and I see how they are, and just our interactions,
Mm-hmm.
they feed off of each other. You know, and I've helped one of them recover herself, and I found myself teaching her DBT and things for borderline, but then I would twist it, you know. So instead of emotional dysregulation and getting in charge of your emotions and you know getting to that grounding space,
Mm-hmm.
I would tell her to you know to mentalize things that cause emotional responses. You know, so the borderline is trying to keep their emotions down, and the
Right.
narcissist is trying to like spark it. You know, like however it is for them. You
Right.
know, in regards of other people, that clinginess, that fear of abandonment,
Mm-hmm.
that like if we don't get a text message from a friend or anything like that, that's the borderline side of it. The other aspect of it is that those people are going to be there no matter what. They better answer me. They better, you know, that entitlement, that you know not exploitative. I hate that term, but like they have roles for everybody. This is why you're here. This is what the function that you serve. You know, and so. But the borderline is, what can I do for you? How do I function for you? You know, and like once again, they just go into each other. The grandiosity versus the emptiness, the entitlement versus like the people pleasing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and you go down the list,
Right.
and for me to have overcome, you know, my fear of abandonment and like fix my unstable interpersonal relationships, I've had to learn more self-love for myself. I had to set up boundaries. I had to like be able to see my worth and stand up for it and focus more on my worth than other people's. The narcissist has no problem with that. They walk in the room and they take command of it instantly, you
Right.
know? And then for them it's the other way around, where if they're too overbearing and they're too on top of other people, they have to consider the other person first. They have to maybe empathize and think of the situation in that point of view, you know. Borderlines, all we think about is the other person. Another part of this is I think there is a link between cluster B and you know, just childhood experiences, adverse childhood experiences, and domestic violence, and all of those kinds of things. There's too many overlaps for there not to be at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think that depending on the toxic partner
Mm-hmm.
and how that how their behaviors manifest
Mm-hmm.
dictates where that's going to go. So
Right.
if father is much more toxic, they're going to be more narcissistic, you know, just effect. Versus if the mother is more toxic and she's more overbearing, like in my situation,
All
you
right.
know, I think there's going to be much more like borderline
Fine.
symptomatology, you
Okay.
know, especially the emotional dysregulation. That's the key. You know, narcissists come from like a cold, there is no emotion, there is no one's allowed to feel, no one feels anything. And the
Mm-hmm.
borderline family, it's everyone's feeling what they're, you know,
Yeah.
my mom was feeling all the time, 24/7, you know, her mood
Oh.
changed, we all changed. So those are just, you know, some of the things. Um, yeah, I mean, just meeting people with NPD and just experiencing their grandiosity, their entitlement. They're so sure of themselves, like they just exude that it may be false, you know, it may be just something that like they give off to the world, but they can still access that. They can still channel that, you know. Someone like me, I've had issues looking in the mirror sometimes, you know, just because of like that deep shame, that inherent like I don't belong here, no one will ever love me, like that constant inner critic that's running in my head. It's I've never experienced that, like, oh, look at me, like love me and that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think they go very hand in hand.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. I mean, how do you deal with your shame though? If you don't mind me asking. I mean, that's something I've heard like throughout for everyone in the class to be struggle with dealing with shame.
Doing things like this, to be honest. One of my therapists told me one time that you get rid of shame by talking about it. These things, these mistakes that I've made, these things that have happened, the
Mhm.
breakups, whatever the case may be, that is the core of the shame. I have to get it out there. I have to talk about it. I if I've internalized it my entire life, I my fear of abandonment has forced me to not share it with other people.
Mhm.
And I think a big turning point for me with that is going to Codependence Anonymous.
Mhm.
I'm a huge advocate for that, and it's an amazing space just because you're not talking to a clinician, you're talking to other people. There's that like level of like equality and just camaraderie that you don't find anywhere else. And it's a safe space where you can share like what's going on and like experiences that you've gone through, and you get that validation, you get that non-judgmental, like sometimes you don't need an answer. Sometimes you just need to talk. Sometimes you just need a space where you're not going to be judged and just get it off your chest. Like
Absolutely.
there's just so much benefit in just that.
Okay. I'm so glad you opened your oh okay, yeah, sorry. I'm so glad you opened your Instagram. I'm excited for you to start your YouTube as well. So I'm looking forward to that. And okay, so I'm just a little curious. So you have, although it's not really diagnosed, you kind of have ASPD, but you have BPD, and those are kind of like pretty opposite at the same time. So how exactly do you have both? I'm just like confused.
Yeah, yeah. I feel the same way whenever I hear someone has NPD and BPD. I'm like, they're opposites. How could you have them both? I don't get it. Um, I think there's a lot of overlaps between the two,
Oh,
ASPD and BPD. A lot. The I mean, other people, other antisocials that I've met, they have that emotional dysregulation as well.
mm-hmm.
I think there's a much more focus on anger.
Okay.
There's anger and the externalizing, reaction to anger. I think
Mhm.
borderline leans much more on like grief and sorrow and sadness. Everything is much more of like of just, just the sadness and the like. There's no hope or anything like that.
Mhm.
It also internalizes. That's where the self harming comes from. That's where that inner critic comes from. Everything is put inward, and that fear of abandonment keeps you from displaying and that sadness because you're afraid people are going to leave if you're a mess, if you're too like sad all the time and things like that. The impulsivity looks different. I think both personality disorders have that not planning of the future, that impulsive, like no thinking of the consequences, but the motivation behind those behaviors are different. So for BPD, it's going to be the emotional dysregulation once again. Like if my emotions are out of control and I'm feeling anything too much, I'm gonna drink. I'm gonna get the coping mechanism to help that emotion calm down, whether it's hurting myself, whatever the case may be. you
Mhm.
know it also has to do with the fear of abandonment. I we do the craziest things if we think we're going to get broken up with. It's I mean, that's everybody knows it. And whether we do it to like show our partner, like we're going to show you, or whether we do it to like self-soothe, or whether we do it to make the abandonment happen ourselves, because we'll do that too. That's more of the motivation versus the ASPD. It goes back to that apathy. It goes back to that I don't care of the consequences. It doesn't matter, so I can do anything because there's no consequences, and even if there are, I won't care anyway. you know and then I don't care about the law either. I don't care about like the consequences coming from authority. So
Mhm.
I'm really just gonna, make any decision that's just gonna pop in my head. The suicide rates, a lot of something huge that people don't realize is people with antisocial, the suicide is just the same. You know, um, I think borderlines present more victimizing, so they end up in like a hospital, or they'll end up like an emergency room, or they'll go to therapy, to like stay with the partner.
Mhm.
ASPD, it's just the level of behavior is just so radical that you're going to end up more with the authorities. The
Oh,
police are just much, yeah, it's just much more likely for them to get involved.
you could have been more on point. That answers a lot of incidents in my life, but okay. Um, so that's where like the whole showing up at the doorstep thing guts comes from, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Actually, this is a question from a member because it's very close to this. So, I'm gonna read that out. Although I don't exactly like how it's framed. Um, I'll try to reframe it a little bit. Um, do they, I'm assuming there's people with ASPD keep thinking about their exes and vengeance their entire life after they settle, or is it like they forget and move on? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the revenge is a big part of it.
Okay, okay.
I do from time to time. Uh, I've had to put a lot of work in, to let that go, because it is anger. It is, I feel there's been some level of injustice, some level of like unfairness,
Mm-hmm.
that's gone on. So I do have that, like, I'll show you, I'll do something. I'll get back to you,
Right.
that vindictiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, would it be for both? No, I don't think the borderline part. I don't think borderline comes with revenge. That we
Okay.
like borderlines won't do revenge because they'll still always think there's a chance of them getting back together in the future.
Oh,
You
okay.
know, yeah, yeah. 10 years can pass, and still I have those things, in my head where it's like, oh, maybe one day we'll just like meet up in this city and we'll bump into each other, and then like like those thoughts still go through my head.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I don't. So the last thing I'm gonna do is like anger that person more, because that will just ruin that chance.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now, so even if it's been like a really long time and there's like probably like no chance of it happening.
For me, yeah, I would still say that there's still, like, if I were to start thinking about it,
Mm-hmm.
I just start thinking of just situations that maybe this will happen, maybe that'll happen. It's
Mm.
still there.
I think I think that's a little normal. I'm not like uh completely saying it's normal, but it's a little normal. I think people all imagine that sort of thing. So it's fine.
I,
Um,
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, like that's just, those are just your thoughts. That's just gonna happen. Now, what you do with that is,
hang on.
are you gonna sit there and fixate on it and justify it? That's not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell myself, it's been enough time. This person's moved on. I've moved on. Would I accept that person even back in my life? No.
Okay.
And that's where I can, bring myself back from that thought process.
Absolutely. Okay, but with this context, actually, um, if the person was the toxic person was rather physically abusive, and it's been a couple of years, is there still like a need to worry about any sort of vengeance? I know this is like you can't speak for everyone, so but I don't know.
Um, that's hard to say. I would say, if you still have like fear of that, the first thing to consider is you have PTSD. If you were physically abused,
Mhm.
you're going to develop PTSD from that. That hypervigilance, that constant thinking it's going to come up from somewhere. So that's the first thing I would look at. As far as the other partner, that's, I my two exes, they're not going to contact me again. I know it for a fact, but I saw someone after that was also a pretty bad situation, and
Mhm.
I'm still afraid that they'll contact me. Like, to this day, I've looked into like restraining orders and things like that, just because they've done it in the past, and
Oh
it's
God.
yeah, yeah. So I do, and it's not specific to ASPD. I would say that for any cluster B. Even if it's like someone with BPD doing a suicide attempt or something, and making it seem like the other person pushed them to do it or something like that. Like anything is possible when it comes to that. if they're untreated and if they're at like a lower level of functioning.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. I just have to so I have seen people with ASPD also display grandiosity. So how is that different from the NPD sort of grandiosity, both internally and for the people that are like looking at them? Because sometimes it can seem pretty similar.
I think a major difference is grandiosity specifically. It's false. It's not reality. You
Right.
know,
Right.
ASPD and borderlines as well. We're always in reality. We're
Okay.
constant. We don't have that like fantasy defense when it comes to the outside world. Maybe
Mhm.
with a partner, but not everything else. So I don't think I have grandiosity, you know, but my ego, and when it comes out and I'm sure of myself, it's because I know what I'm talking about, because I know what I'm doing. You know, I have that expertise, I have that experience. If I don't have that knowledge, I'm not gonna fake it because I'm afraid of like someone calling my bluff. You
Mhm.
know, the narcissist, the whole thing is about the presentation to the other people. You know, they're not thinking about like what if the person figures out that I'm a fraud. They don't think like that. We
Mhm.
do, because we're constantly looking for threats. You know, everybody's a threat. You know,
Oh,
for somebody, for the narcissist, somebody's a new friend, a new source of supply. You know, that's not how we look at it. So we don't present that fake persona out there that will look at me, look at us. You know, like look how I am, look, I'm better than you. None of that is there. If anything, we're behind the scenes. We're
oh,
doing things that, you know, like, yeah, yeah, absolutely. We don't want confrontation unless we're in control of it. We don't want, you know, anything to happen unless we're in control of it. You know, we don't like I would never go into somewhere that I don't know what's going to happen and be my antisocial self. You know, I'm going to see everything that's going on and plan everything out in my head before I start acting.
mhm. Okay, so
I don't know if that answers.
no, you totally did. So, uh, would you say all your emotions are genuine?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there won't be any faking, unlike in the sense of like no NPD there, because just a second. Okay, all your emotions are genuine.
I'm sorry.
All your emotions are genuine.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
I'm not someone who fakes anything at all.
okay.
I'm, you know, I'm very. I think that's another part of being antisocial. Just I don't conform to like behavior or this should, you know, things should be a certain type of way. I'm just gonna be myself and not care. You know, I'm going to call somebody out on something and
Not,
not care.
not,
I don't care about, you know, like anything like that. So if I don't have that emotion, I'm not going to display it. So one of the symptoms is remorselessness, and that's, you know, that core is guilt. Guilt is me feeling bad about a behavior that I've done, a certain action that I've done. If I
uh-huh,
did something, I did it. I don't regret it. You know, I something must have happened that caused me to behave in that way, and so I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to do anything about it because I feel justified. You
uh-huh.
know, yeah.
So at some point, with the borderline not like click in to contradict that feeling.
The remorselessness.
Yeah.
Good question. No, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to the relationship, I'm always thinking about my actions first. You know, I like I triple think about it to make sure everything is like good and perfect. I don't want to upset the other person. Feeling guilty. I feel shame. You know, I feel shame either side. The shame is there. I feel bad that I did it, but I don't feel bad of the thing that I did. If that makes sense. You know, like that. The difference between guilt and shame is guilt is just the specific behavior. You know,
Mhm.
shame is I'm the type of person that was capable of doing that behavior. You
Okay.
know,
It's
and
more
like, uh,
it's more like, I mean, this is something I've maybe noticed. It's more like, oh fuck, I feel like I'm a bad person now, sort of a thing.
right, right. I mean, shame forces you to be better. You know, like if you do something bad and you feel ashamed about it, then you got to be a better person and not do it again. You know, like you have to be a better person, not stop doing the behavior. If that makes sense
Yeah.
at all.
That makes total sense.
Yeah. Like if I do something to somebody they did it first, so hey, I was justified, but I
Right.
still feel bad about myself that I dropped to that level and hurt the other person. There's no focus on the behavior itself. If I stole something from somebody because they stole it first,
Mhm.
they stole it first. I don't care that I stole,
Mhm.
but I shouldn't be stealing.
You should base it. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
This two-sided. Okay. If you don't
yeah.
mind, asking, how are
Mhm.
you so self-aware? I mean, given that you've been diagnosed with so many things, I mean, doesn't that like your coping mechanism to like pretend like it's not happening or pretend like you're not in the wrong?
I I don't know. I've put a lot of work in. I guess I've put in a lot of work, years and years, and different clinicians and stuff. Um, I think people have to go past like the regular DBT. You know, DBT is like level one. You know, it's just meant to like keep you alive.
Mm-hmm.
Better coping mechanism so you're not making stupid decisions and destroying your relationships. That's about as far as it goes. You got to go inward. You know, like you have to get like like internal family systems and mentalization specifically, especially for ASPD.
Okay.
Um, the way that our empathy issues come out,
Mm-hmm.
it's we feel justified for anything that we've done. So we can't empathize with the other. I don't care how you feel because I did it because you did something first. You know, we can't take into consideration why did that other person do it. That emotional like empathy there, it's not there at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's replaced with the revenge. It's replaced with the, you know, the just getting back, you know, the eye for the eye kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
mentalization really puts you in that state of the best way I can describe it is it's like a cognitive, yeah, it is a cognitive form of empathy, you know.
I was
Just doing like thought exercises of like if I was this person, what would I do? You know, like this, I would do this and this and this. Maybe this would cause me to feel this way. You know, that's the closest that we can get to it. Um,
Hmm.
I wouldn't. I know, but now I will say that this isn't for everybody. This isn't just an automatic feeling. You know, people with ASPD have huge levels of empathy. We, you know, like we come from violent homes. We were bullied. We come from very victimizing situations. And so if we see somebody else in that similar situation, we will stand up for them. It could be a stranger on the street and we will stand up for them instantly, you know? And what is that? That's empathy. I went through that. I would never want somebody else to go through that. So you're not going to do it in front of me, you know? And I've always felt that. Uh, and like my lack of empathy comes out in just someone who's wronged me, someone who has hurt me first, you know, because I'm not going out there. A huge misconception is that we're sitting somewhere plotting and
not.
scheming and like, you know, like we're just we want to do these bad things. No, most of our behaviors come from emotional dysregulation. We have poor impulse control, we make terrible decisions, anger pops up, we want to get revenge, and that's it. Next thing you know, we see black and we've done some crazy stuff, you know. But it's not controlling, it's not calculating or all of that other garbage that you see online.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, there's this idea that everything is so sadistic. Like I sit at home and I'm like, I'm planning, yeah, okay, today I'm gonna go hurt this person.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible. You know, and I think that's a huge differentiation between sociopathy and psychopathy.
I
You
know.
know, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because it like that planning and that Machiavellianism that comes from the more cold and flat affect side of it. You
Mhm.
know, because if you have no emotional dysregulation, you're much more in your head. You're much more. That's where the manipulation and the planning and all of that stuff comes from. You know, that's not the ASPD side. The ASPD is with BPD in the emotional part, in the chaotic part. You
Mhm.
know, in the we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes. That kind of thing.
Okay. And, well, um, how do I frame this? So I wouldn't say intentional manipulation, some sort of like subconscious manipulation. Do you feel like people with BPD and ASPD are subconsciously manipulative?
Yes,
Especially,
absolutely.
yeah, for sure. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, again, the motivations will be different. But there's subconscious and there's even some conscious. You know, there's lying as well. You know, just to get your result done. You know, BPD. I will say again, it's much more with the relationships and close people. But I've made things up. I've made problems worse than what they were to manipulate and keep partners around. You know, when it comes to ASPD, it's much more external. I'll if I need to get some if I'm not safe and I need to get something from someone, I'll say whatever I have to and not feel bad about it after. You know, I try not to hurt, I try not to take from others, but that's you know, I've gone through a lot of recovery, but I remember like the old days where I didn't care and I would say anything, I would do anything, you know, and it's very easy. It's very easy for us to just put a mask on.
I mean, I'm not justifying it, but you kind of have no choice, dude.
You got to do what you got to do to survive.
I do. I mean, I get it. I mean, okay, so y- you've been going to therapy and doing a lot of working on yourself a lot, right? So are you implying that there has been only growth cognitively or emotionally as well? Is it actually possible to kind of gain that sort of emotional empathy?
Um, I think you can gain, you know, get it. I, it's hard for you to empathize if you're dysregulated all the time. That's you know that's the, how can I focus on that other person's emotional state if I can't even focus on my own? You know, yeah. I think that's a huge part of it. I think we're all born with it. I think we're all born with that level of empathy. And I think empathy is also taught. You know, if you want to be a clinician, you take classes on empathy. You take classes on, you know, like connecting with the other person cognitively, and that will lead to the emotional state. Because how else do have we learned emotions? We mirrored our parents, you know. It's possible. It's there. I think people think it's weird that we have to learn it. You know, I think that's where that it comes from, but it is possible. And the fact that we have to learn it, that's not our fault. We didn't have an environment growing up where we could learn it. So, you know, what are we going to do? Be better and learn now.
I love that. I honestly, and this is precisely why I hate it when people say like people, especially in the cluster B, can't change because it's like you're basically telling them that there's like no hope and like yeah, this is where you're gonna be, and there's like no way things can change for you, and that just sucks, honestly.
It's horrible. It's horrible, and it's illegal. You know, I mean, people forget that the personality disorders are a mental disorder. You know, I see no difference between that and like this term narcissistic abuse. What's the difference between that and like autism abuse or any other disorder in the DSM abuse? You know, people wouldn't talk like that. There would be groups online everywhere saying like, "Oh, you can't say that," you know, all of that. But all of a sudden, it's okay for narcissistic abuse. I mean, there's even phrases like borderline abuse and cluster B abuse now. You know, and that my heart breaks for any borderline who just recently found their diagnosis and they read stuff like that online,
Getting their
and
approval.
it's horrible. You know, I've met so many people online where like I literally go on Quora and on Instagram and on these pages and like talk to other borderlines because this is extremely damaging. Extremely, they already feel unloved. They already like struggle with suicidal ideation, and now they read things like "I'm a monster. I'll never find love." You know, I should isolate. I shouldn't be around people. I don't know how it's happening.
I know that just sucks. I mean, I think you know, although I can understand, I feel like there has to be a new term for people that are on the other side of this to figure out a new word for this. Like, not, you don't have to call it narcissistic abuse. You can just call it, I mean, if you've been abused, just call it abuse. Like, it doesn't have to have an extra term with that, right? Like, toxic is toxic, abuse is abuse. You don't have to kind of put an extra label on that. You can just say my partner was manipulative or my partner was toxic and abusive or lying and all of that, but you don't kind of have to put labels on everything because that personifies just everything.
You know,
Um,
the ironic part in all of this is that term comes from someone with NPD. He I know the person. He has a YouTube channel, and he's the one who's put a lot of this information out there.
Mhm.
And I think at first he did it to help other people with NPD, but now it's gotten out of control. Now it's just become like a market, like a money marketing system, And I think a big part of this too is anybody who is in a relationship with an untreated cluster B, they themselves have a disorder. I don't know what you want to call it. The DSM used to have things called like self-defeating personality disorder, masochistic personality disorder, and the symptoms are specifically that they feel self-worth from like being, degraded by somebody else. And that's where like the codependent comes from, the empath and all these other words too. Like everybody knows that this is a certain kind of person, but we just don't know what the term for it is. As of now, I call them enabler. Like they're an enabler.
Enabler.
Like my partner, if I'm a borderline and I'm untreated,
Mhm.
my partner's enabling me. If I do a bad behavior and they do something where I'm gonna be worse,
Mhm.
they're telling me that my behavior is okay, and they're getting self-worth from my dysregulation. There's a push and pull there, and I've seen it myself. So just the term narcissistic abuse is putting all the blame on one person. What about you? But they're not self-aware either, so they're gonna victimize themselves, and like that's where the issue is.
Yeah, I think there has to be. Okay, I'm going to talk about a little bit of my own thing and how I came to this actually. So I started off. um, I s- okay, I first learned the term narcissistic abuse, right? And I kind of related to that. It did help me initially, but I wasn't exactly in this sort of victim mode where it's like, oh my God, I'm the victim, right? I mean, I knew I'm like taking on shit and there's something about me. Why am I taking on abuse as well, right?
Mhm.
And then after one point, I was just like, why are people whining so much though? Like, there is this, like, initially I get it. Trust me, it helped me a lot. It helped me a lot. But after like 10 days of like watching more videos, I was like, but why are you whining so much? Like, you gotta stop. And then I was like, okay, this is uncomfortable. And sometimes I was like, you feel narcissistic yourself because why are you always the victim? Like, I,
And then there's like the pissing contest too of like, no, I was abused more. Well, did your ex-husband do this? Like, and I've seen
he
conversations
did.
like that. Yeah,
Then I will not take names, but there are few channels out there that I think are not. Well, I think the people calling it narcissistic abuse, I think they're pretty narcissistic themselves, but I will not be naming them. But yeah, I don't think that helps. Actually, I don't even think that helps people that are facing it, because it's like it encourages you to not take accountability as well. It's just pushing you to not be self-aware. Like that's your problem. That's not a me problem.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's a very easy excuse for you to not work on yourself, because if everything was on the other person and I'm the victim, I don't have to do anything. I could just sit here and cry, and like that's it. I've seen people like, I left my narcissist 20 years ago. Why are you still talking about it after 20 years? Like clearly you need some type of professional help, because that's not healthy. That's not healthy at all.
Exactly. I mean, like I can understand like talking about it from this very emotionally detached sort of way. Hey, yeah, this is how I navigate it. This is how I do it. But no, it feels whenever they talk, it feels like it's pretty fresh. Like it feels like it just happened yesterday, and you can still
Mhm.
sense that thing there. And it's a little annoying, I won't lie. So I just sort of muted those sort of accounts. uh, but
And I can relate to that too. I've gone through, like, I don't know. I hate the term abuse because it implies intent. It implies that like the person's actively making the choice to do these things, and it's just not the case. You
Mhm.
know, if a cluster B individual is it put in a situation, those behaviors come out, they're just gonna come out, and that's just like, I remember there are times where my ex knew he was right. He himself, in his point of view, thought he was right. He could have been doing the worst thing possible, making lies about me, keeping me from like my stuff, anything like that. but to him, he was right. So he's not doing it to hurt me. He's doing it because he feels in crisis. He feels like he's not in a safe place, and that's why those behaviors are happening. I don't feel like they abused me. You know, I don't feel like they did those things to hurt me. That's not what they were trying to do. And I I just it's some of the things that I read, you know, that like they pretended for like 2 years and that's when the masks came off, you know, like no, those signs were there from the beginning. You were having those issues from the beginning. They did not sit there and plot to like do these things to you, you know.
Yeah.
And I
It's like a self-defense sort of mask. I don't like because I see this like in the beginning how it feels very real. And I think it's because it is very real. It is not fake. That's the whole point of it, right? It's not fake. No one's I know what you're saying. I can't agree more. I couldn't agree more.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I just have one thing, and this is probably a myth, not sure, but are all sociopaths narcissistic?
I don't think so. I don't think I am. I don't think I'm narcissistic. I mean, some of the symptoms directly contradict narcissism, you know. Like reckless disregard. It's like suicide. It's like suicidal self harm plus everybody else around me. You know, there's this lack of like the consequences. You know, everything that narcissist does, it is they've planned out the result. They've planned out what's going to happen because they need everything to fit the script, or so to say. You know, they need the outcomes that they need.
Mm-hmm.
um I don't think about outcomes. I don't think about like consequences.
Okay.
So you know what I mean? Like there's that self-preservation, it's not there. It just isn't. um you know, I think reputation comes to it as well. I think narcissists really care about what other people think about them,
Mm-hmm.
what, you know, their social structure and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
um Antisocials don't have that. I have a very small group of friends and that's about it. So I don't care how I look online. I don't care how I look in the real world. I'm very crass, I'm very blunt, you know. I just whatever pops in my head, I'm going to say it. I don't have the time or energy to think about like social etiquette and things like that. And you know that I think narcissists do. You know, we're very anti-society. We're against societal norms. We don't care about it. We stay away from groups. We stay away from like systems and
Mm-hmm.
institutions. I think narcissists are very pro-social. They're very, you know, they're very institutionally driven. um, you know, they care about their wealth and their material items and their material goods. We are much more disattached from
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff. One of our other symptoms is irresponsibility, financial irresponsibility. So
Mm-hmm.
we don't, you know, like there's that lack of want for that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. I mean, based on what you're saying, um, I feel like although I haven't personally known someone like that, it sounds like someone with ASPD can be probably less problematic than a lot of people that are not even in the cluster B. Like, because it's like kind of minding their own business. They don't really give a fuck. So unless someone
Absolutely.
actively goes out and like tries to get them or does something to them, they won't really interfere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're survival mechanisms, you know. They're these behaviors come from a place that I need to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
And if no one's doing anything to me, I'm safe, you know? So I think that's a big part of it. Any of the laws that we're breaking, any of the things that we're doing that are anti-society, it's
Mm-hmm.
because we don't have any other way to get it. You know, we're breaking, where we're committing fraud and we're doing things of that nature because we have no other way to get money.
Mm-hmm.
We it's like that, you know, and once again, it's the institutions that failed us. Yeah, I come from an inner city. I come from a very poor, broken like home. So I wasn't taught how to, you know, deal with my finances. I wasn't taught how to like do certain things, and I've had to adapt and you know, satisfy those needs and those things, those needs in different ways. And sometimes they're not going to be how everybody else does it.
But you're doing pretty well, honestly. Yes, I mean, I just want to ask one last thing. And this is terms of both. How do you deal with anger issues?
I run a lot.
Mm. Okay.
uh, yeah, I run a lot. You know, a lot of our behaviors, we didn't know what else to do. You got to
Uh,
learn something new,
right.
exercise, get
Okay.
active, get that energy out somewhere, be
Okay.
creative,
Okay.
get out there and write a song, do something to get that energy out. Uh, I'll play music,
Mhm.
I'll take a shower, I'll play with my cats, things like that.
Mhm.
Uh, I the first part is like anger's not bad. Anger's not no emotion is negative or bad. Anger is there for a reason. So you
Mhm.
got to figure out what that reason is. Uh, we come from households that we weren't allowed to express anger. So now when we do, it's so much higher than what a normal reaction would be.
Mhm.
So we just need help to like get us back to baseline, and then my anger has come down a lot.
Okay.
It's come down a lot, and it's with practice. It's with practice. It's with routine.
So, in terms of practice and routine, do you mean therapy or run?
Therapy and your new coping mechanisms. Um, like if I got angry earlier on, I would self harm. I would binge drink. I would drive recklessly. Now to get that emotional energy out. Now I'll play music. I'll do exercise. I'll do something. I'll clean the house. That energy is still there. I need to just get it out in a better way.
Hmm. Okay.
But
So,
that's not going to come natural in the beginning. That's what I mean by practice.
okay. So hypothetically, let's say you were mad at me right now, and your anger is sort of getting out of control. So, what would you do in that state?
I would remove myself from the situation first. And if I'm hitting the point where I can't control it anymore, sorry, I need 5 minutes. I'd walk away.
Please. Okay.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
need to have
Because if
that
I
self-awareness.
stay, uh,
You need to have that self-awareness to walk away, though, right?
yes, absolutely, absolutely. Start looking at your body first. If you're starting to sweat, if your heart is starting to pound, if you're breathing, deeper, if you're shaking, if the body's going to tell you that there's an emotional activation.
Hmm. So, did you how did you start off? Is that what you started doing? You started walking away from situations? I mean, but in that state, how would you be able to okay, how do I frame this? This is something I've noticed, especially with people that have borderline. When they get angry, they kind of almost, it feels like they don't really see you anymore. You're just like there. So it's like being angry. So in that state, how would you have the cognitive, emotional thing to be like, okay, I need to kind of walk away now?
Um, I mean, this is distress tolerance. Like the first thing you do is recognize your body. You recognize the changes in your own body. Because when an emotion overwhelms us, we start to dissociate. We
Mhm.
start to check out. We're not in that. We're not in that place anymore. And it's like you just said. We don't see that other person anymore. We see wherever that anger was originally, which is back in childhood, and
Right.
now that's the state we're in.
Mhm.
For me, I learned the first thing was I kept interrupting people.
Oh,
That was my first red flag where I was just talking over them. I start using my hands a lot more. I'll start pacing. I'll start sweating. And once two or three of those things happen, I'm dysregulated. I,
oh,
I tell myself in my head I'm dysregulated, so I need to remove myself.
that takes a fuck ton of self-awareness. I'm sorry, but uh, um,
It gets easier. I promise.
so do you think everyone out there has hope? Because is it possible to push someone to be self-aware?
It has to come from them. It has to come from them.
Has to
You
come.
know.
Yeah.
Because if you're pushing them to be better, quote unquote, you're putting them right back in the trauma that started the disorder to begin with. You're telling, like, for
I,
me, you know, if somebody tells me how I'm feeling, like if I'm talking loudly and somebody tells me, "Oh, why are you upset?" and they're labeling me like that, that'll trigger me instantly because that's where my dysregulation comes from. You know, somebody else telling me how I feel, somebody else telling me I don't have the right to feel that way.
Okay, so suppose you were feeling a certain emotion and you probably me pointing out what you felt would probably trigger you, even if you didn't know what you were feeling. Like if it's coming
If
from a
if
good place, like if I'm coming and telling you, hey, I feel like you're feeling a certain way, would would you feel perceive that as me shaming you?
it depends how you tell me, you know,
Okay.
like if you if how you just said it, like, hey, you know, I think this, or is it possible you're feeling that? Like if you're doing it in an empathetic way, I'm definitely gonna like be more open to listening to you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do something passive aggressive and then later on you're like, I did that because you were upset and I wasn't upset,
Mm-hmm.
that's gonna trigger me because you did a behavior based off of what you think I was feeling in my emotional state. So you're labeling my emotional state, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Or if you flat out tell me that, like, stop being so angry, and I'm not even angry, that'll make me angry, you know, because I know what I'm feeling. Don't
Mm-hmm.
label that. And most of the time, it's because the other person is not dealing with their emotion. And it's very easy, it's very convenient for them to put it on us.
Okay, I get it. I mean, I've noticed this happen the other way around, where
Okay.
people with borderline sort of assume that the other person feels a certain way, where they like label that this person's like feeling a certain way, although that's actually not really true at all.
I would argue the core of that is abandonment.
About
If you know, yeah, if the other person, if I don't get a text message from my partner for a while, I'll start to think they're mad at me. I did something wrong. You know, something happened. You know, like I start to put that on them, and that's the abandonment talking. You know, it's not. It's not like the dysregulation, it's the abandonment because my partner normally talks to me. They normally communicate with me. Why aren't they communicating with me now? Something must be wrong.
so has the fear of abandonment kind of like reduced for you?
One more time.
Has the fear of abandonment like reduced for you?
Yes,
It,
absolutely.
okay,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
but
I mean, in the beginning, it was enough for me to have, you know, do an attempt on my life. That's where I started. Um, Now it's still there. The anxiety is still there sometimes, but now I have the coping mechanisms to deal with it. You know, I reality check. I use like cognitive reasoning. Why hasn't this person texted me yet? Maybe his phone died. Maybe he's in a meeting. Maybe whatever the case may be. Instead of just reacting off of the emotion just automatically.
okay, I get it. And final question. But this is probably more subjective, so I don't know if you can answer for everyone, but um, do you think like fixing your perception or relationship with your mother helps in any way with all of this?
Um, oh, that's a loaded one. I don't want to offend anybody. I'm
Uh-huh.
just gonna tell my own story. I've cut my family out of my life. I don't talk to them anymore. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And I was the scapegoat growing up. You know, everything bad, everything negative was my fault.
Mhm.
If I ever needed help, I
Mhm.
didn't get it because I was expected to just be able to survive and do it on my own. You
Mhm.
know, and holidays and my being around my family would triggered me very badly. The last time I saw them was maybe 2 years ago, and it ended in a full blown BPD like episode rage attack. You know, yeah. So and it was just the last one. I decided I couldn't put myself through that anymore because if the thank you if the other person isn't willing on changing, you're still being traumatized, especially your parents. You know, I these are attachment disorders that
Mhm.
started because of dysregulated relationships in the household.
Mhm.
And whatever was happening there, you know, like like for ASPD, it was the financial issues, it was the instability and the just the criminal behavior, but that my parents did. And the borderline comes from the emotional dysregulation and the just the back and forth, the I love you, don't hate me between the two of them. That's where it comes from. And I've seen it in my relationships. I've seen like every ex that I have, it's like, oh, this is my mom and her depressive cycles. This is my mom and her manic cycles. Like I can sit there and like see, the correlation and just compare it. And it's helped me a lot too. I think relationships in general for narcissists and borderlines, it's the core of what the disorder is. Absolutely. And if you want to try and tell your mom that it was her fault that you're that way, hey,
Okay.
like that's good luck. But I know people that have had that conversation and they've changed. They've changed a little bit. Yeah, yeah, absolutely,
Oh,
absolutely. Yeah, I think age has a lot to do with it. I think just like experiences and things like that. Like people change. People like personalities are not set in stone. Like everything that we go through, we're gonna change a little bit. And so once all the kids move out the house, your mom's gonna be a lot more mellow. She's not gonna be as controlling. Maybe you can have that conversation.
but I don't, I think it's still like chances are the mother is gonna go into like a victim mode.
Yeah, the victim mode, they'll pull out the how could you, I'm your mother, how could you talk to
Um,
me like that? I brought you into this world and like, yeah, all of that stuff.
So,
I I mean, you're challenging like a huge part of who she is. She's a mother, she's your mother. You telling her that she did something is telling her she did a bad job for most of her life, like it's not easy to like swallow.
yeah. So, okay, if you can't like fix your relationship with your mother, I'm not talking about you, okay, like quite literally you, but because the mother won't all over the cluster be. Um, Changing how you perceive your mom, would that help?
Yes,
That would help.
yes. And it's necessary. You have to recognize that she was doing the best that she could. What
Um,
what she was doing for you was what she thought was the best, because she's a mother. She loves her children, and even if it's toxic behavior, there is still a motivation for her behind that behavior, and you have to recognize that. You know, and you can't take it personal. You can't take it personal because it'll destroy you. You'll think about it all the time. You have to give and let it go, because a huge part of BPD is resentment, of bitterness, and like we can't let go of things, especially when it comes to abandonment, and it blocks the possibility of new relationships, and
okay.
you just have to remember that.
Is it possible that someone who probably displays or has like developed borderline over time and not in their childhood as such, like probably in their 20s or 30s?
If they can what present
Develop
the
borderline.
symptoms.
Yeah, like maybe if they were relatively quiet in their childhood and they weren't that angry, but suddenly like they start changing or suddenly they start developing very BPD like symptoms. Is that possible? Or do you think they
Yeah.
always have borderline and it was
No, I think that I think personality disorders are all trauma based. So eventually you're going to be in a situation that forces you to re-experience that trauma from childhood. So that could happen at any time. You could not be in a relationship, have your first one in your 30s, get dumped, and then all of a sudden the BPD comes out because that's the first time that you've experienced abandonment again since childhood.
okay? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
talk.
of course.
And I know this is completely out of topic, but I love your cat because I saw it
Oh,
going
did you?
like thrice, and it's orange red.
Yeah, I have two, an orange one and a gray one.
Oh my God. Okay, the orange ones are the best. They're the best. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here and keep doing what you do, honestly. And I can't wait for your YouTube channel. Um, and I'm gonna thank Jacob because I found you through him. So I'm gonna do that as well. And yeah, and I'll upload this on YouTube, so I will let you know when that's done.
Awesome. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. Okay.
And thank you so much for bringing me on. You know, I'm trying to build up to like my own YouTube thing, and just doing things like this, it really helps.
Oh, of course. I mean, how are you planning to like start? Like, how are we gonna go about it? Are you gonna do what like Jacob and Tessa are doing, or?
Um, I'm just gonna start throwing videos together. You know, I'm gonna start with like my lived experience with BPD and ASPD. Just there's so much misinformation out there, especially from the clinicians. So much, and
So
I,
happy.
I I think that any clinician that's out there talking about narcissistic abuse should lose their license. Like I really do. Like I don't understand how they're getting away with it, you know?
Oh my,
And I
I
uh,
could. There's this. I will send this to you on private later. But yeah, like I have seen clinical psychologists that are obsessed with that term, and that's all they talk about. They don't like, what are you doing? Like, you are a therapist. You are you're doing the opposite of what you're supposed to do. But
absolutely. And then making money on top of it, you know? It's horrible.
anyways, I hope you have a lovely day. Day, yes. Okay, morning for you, right? Okay, I hope you have a lovely day. And thank you so much again.
No, my pleasure. You have a good day too. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.